Our first reconstruction this month is about a murder. Jackie Waines was 35, the mother of 3 children. Her husband had deserted her and the children had been taken into care. Jackie was a prostitute, working on the streets of Bristol. She was murdered on the evening of the 20th of April. It was a bitterly cold Saturday night, a time which locals might remember because there were a lot of visitors in the area for the last day of the badminton horse trials. Our reconstruction starts in St Paul's, near Bristol's city centre. Jackie worked the streets of St Paul's, where everyone, it seems, knew her. But she was a loner. She only had one real friend, Avril Miles, with whom she shared a house.
As far as I'm concerned, she was more a sister than anything else. She's a good kid, you know. If anybody wanted any help, she would give them. She wouldn't ask twice. But if she wanted help from them, it's a different thing altogether. They judged Jackie because she's dressed scruffy, she was this, she was that. But I mean, people just go by the way she was dressed. You don't judge people like that.
Jackie worked that Saturday night after visiting Avril in hospital.
Coat's back on again.
Yeah, a bit nifty, ain't it?
Lots of people saw her between 8 and 10 o'clock. At 11:15, she walked up Brigstock Road with another girl.
I got picked up last night. When they let me go, I come back out and did a 30.
The red Cortina was parked on the corner of Hepburn Road, where Jackie lived. Since she got straight into the car, without negotiating first, her friend wondered if Jackie knew the man. She remembers him as having curly blonde hair. He turned right at the top of Brigstock Road into Ashley Road. By 11:10, Jackie had returned to the area, Ashley Road in the middle of St Paul's. A prostitute saw her on the other side of the street, getting into a small escort type of van. She didn't see it drive away. 10 minutes later, when she looked again, Jackie was walking the other way, up Ashley Road. It was the last time she was seen alive. At midnight, 9 miles away, some young men were on their way home from a night on the town. They pulled into a track off Perrin Pit Lane, a country road near Frampton Cotterell. They were listening to music and smoking. They had no idea of what was to happen in the next 20 minutes. At 12:10, Mr. and Mrs. Milsom passed the end of the track where the boys were parked.
Look at that chap ditching rubbish. You ought to take his number and report him to the council.
The van must have parked only yards behind the boys, yet they hadn't noticed it.
Darts, I'll take you on a darts next time.
But at about 12:15, some time after the van had gone, they did see a dark Cortina arrive. At 12:20, Craig Howell and his girlfriend Julie passed the same corner. They too saw the Cortina, and then they saw what looked as if it could be a body. Julie turned the car round further down the lane, but by the time they got back to the spot, the Cortina had gone. Jackie's body was found only an hour after she was last seen alive. She'd been stabbed several times.
I want people to help the police to find him before he does it again. You know, you don't know who it's going to be next.
A tragic end there to a sad life. Detective Superintendent Malcolm Hughes is in charge of that investigation. Is there any apparent motive that you can find so far?
Well, the motive certainly isn't robbery, because when her body was found, she still had money with her. There are two possibilities, really, I think. One, that she had some sort of argument with a client of hers, or the more sinister possibility that somebody went out with the express intention of killing a prostitute, or Jackie in particular.
She didn't seem, from what I know, to have been a very argumentative sort of person.
No, that is quite true, and it seems that the latter is the case, and we seem to have a very dangerous man still at large.
Now, you need to trace a number of people, as we saw in our reconstruction. First of all, the man in the red cortina with the curly blonde hair.
Yes, we know that at about 10:45 p.m. that night, she got into a red cortina in Brigstock Road. All the indications are that she may have known this man. He's a man with blonde hair, fair hair, which was curly and may have been highlighted. And they drove off into Ashley Road. Now, if she did know that man, she may have had some conversation and told him of her intentions that night, which of course would be important to us.
So you'd like him to come forward. You'd also like the man who was seen there in the escort type of van. We don't know exactly what sort of van it was or even what colour it was, but we need the man who was driving that van to come forward.
Yes, at about 11:10 in Ashley Road, she was seen to get into a van, which is the same size as an escort van, but we don't know the colour of it. That man is important, but he appears to be the last man that we know that spoke to her.
Right, if we can just get the geography straight of the area. Jackie's body was actually found there at Frampton Cottrell, which is a small village about 9 miles north of the centre of Bristol. How long would it have taken, in fact, to drive there on the M32?
It takes about 15 minutes, in fact. But of course, Jackie could have been murdered anywhere between St Paul's and the spot where her body was found and taken there and dumped.
Right. Well, it was in Perrinpit Lane where she was found, and there's a bridle path, which we're going to see in a minute, which is where those two boys were parked. Those boys were parked listening to music. There it is. And there's the track where they were listening to the music. And their body was dumped just about 10 yards behind their car at the start of that bridle path. Is that right?
Yes, that's right.
Now, what about the white van that was seen in that lane, Perrinpit Lane, by the couple passing by?
Yes. I believe this is probably the most important sighting of the lot. Mr. and Mrs. Shilston drove past there at about 12:10 on the Sunday morning. They saw the white van, and standing beside it, they saw a man who's described as slim build, wearing blue jeans and a multicoloured bomber jacket, similar in every respect to this one.
It's not an entirely uncommon jacket, but...
No, indeed it's not. They're quite popular, but we know that that man was wearing that type of jacket. Now, at his feet, he had a white bundle, a large white bundle, they described it as, and I believe that was the body of Jacqueline Waines. The van itself is white. It's rather larger than a transit-type van, and more importantly, it had on the offside some damage. It looked like an impact mark and some scratches, as you can see there. Now, we would obviously want to locate that vehicle, and certainly we'd want to locate a man who wore a jacket like this, who would have access to a vehicle like that.
And it's just possible that somebody may have patched up that damage on the offside of that van.
Yes, indeed. If anybody knows of a vehicle which has had that sort of damage repaired, then of course we would want to talk to them.
Of course. And also the man driving the dark-coloured Mark IV or Mark V Cortina that we saw there.
Yes, that's intriguing. He hasn't come forward. I believe he must have seen something. And it's very important that I see him, and I'm quite prepared to see him anywhere and in complete confidence.
Now, you've never found one of her shoes. That might provide a clue if you can find the other one of her shoes.
Yes, that's true. Jackie was wearing a pair of shoes, and this is the right one. The left one is missing. Despite quite an extensive search, we haven't found it. If anybody has found or knows the location of a sandal like that, then of course we would want to speak to them.
And all these people who'd like to come forward, and it is in absolute confidence, of course, isn't it?
Yes, indeed. I'm not interested on why those people were down in St Paul's, if they were looking for the services of a prostitute. That doesn't worry me. I need their help, and I would want them to come forward and talk to me tonight in confidence.
To prevent another tragic murder like that?
Yes, indeed.
Thank you very much indeed. If you can help, please do ring us. It is in absolute confidence. You can speak to a BBC researcher if you prefer. The number 01811 8055, or you can call Avon and Somerset Police at Bristol 565 333. That's 0272, the code for Bristol, 565 333. Our last reconstruction tonight concerns the murder of a 61-year-old shopkeeper in Bristol exactly 6 weeks ago. Roy Page ran a corner sweet shop in the old part of Bedminster and regularly stayed open from early morning to late in the evening. His body was found in the back of the shop on Thursday the 18th of July. Whoever killed him left behind one vital clue, this earpiece. A man wearing an identical earpiece and claiming to be a gas board engineer visited 2 tobacconists in the north of Bristol on the morning of that same day. By the afternoon, he had then moved south of the city to Bedminster, which is where our reconstruction begins. Roy Page had been running his corner shop for 10 years. He often spent a lot of his day watching the television between customers. Bedminster is a small community, and most of his customers were regulars.
Hello?
He had a safe in the back of his shop, but had a habit of leaving it open to get change when he needed it. Since his wife died 3 years ago, his sister Shirley came round every Thursday to help in the house.
This money here, I'm putting it back in the safe.
You worry too much.
Okay, I'm
You
off now
organise
then.
it?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, bye.
Bye, sis. See you tomorrow.
Bye.
At about 4:30 that afternoon, a man was seen hanging around outside the shop. He was carrying what looked like a small transistor radio and wearing an earpiece and headsets. Minutes later, the same man was seen outside another tobacconist in the next street. Tom Coles, who lives opposite Roy, would pop in several times a day.
Hello, Roy. Can I have an MC cigar, please?
Hey, I was earlier today.
Well, not too bad. Just part way, I suppose. I'll see you later on. Okay, bye for now.
At 4:45, the man in blue overalls was seen crossing the road away from Roy's shop.
I'm checking for gas leaks in the area up and down this road. I've got to meet round the corner. Have you got any gas leaks here at all?
No, none at all. Have you tried the lady around the corner?
No, I'll do it now.
He'd now been wandering around this small area for a good half an hour.
Hello? I'm looking for a gas leak. Have you got any gas?
Oh, I haven't. I've got it on.
Please. Do you mind if I
No.
I've got to have a look because
Please.
I've had reports in the area of a gas leak, you see.
There you are, look.
Oh, it's just a gas service, is it?
Yes.
You just got this one. Any other gas appliances anywhere?
Well, not in this room, in the other room.
What happened to you then?
Well,
After several minutes, during which the man appeared genuine, he then began to act strangely.
no, I'd have to.
You ever got a glass of water?
Yes, of course. But I think you better let me do it
All
because
right.
this is a terrible tap.
He was sweating heavily.
Perhaps you'd like a cup of tea, would you?
No, I can't stop
make
because
you
my
one.
mate's going up the other side of
I'll
Amber
make
Road.
one
No,
willingly.
don't worry because
He suddenly appeared agitated and anxious to get away.
you know, he's
I've got
coming
gas
up. I've
fire
got
in
to
here.
join him. There's other gas leaks in the area, you see. I'm sorry about that, look. I've got to...
He crossed the road back towards Roy Page's shop.
Up ahead of him, about 100 yards ahead, is the Suez Canal, a big wide ditch that runs right across this 14th fairway.
20 minutes had passed when Mrs. Martina Allen came in. She is the last known person to have seen Roy Page alive.
You want one with roses?
Dead straight on.
Yeah.
The last open champions here, and this one they've allowed the brush to grow in from the right.
How much?
£1.34.
Quiet, isn't it?
Put it in here.
Yet 3 further items had been rung up on the till after she left. Tom Coles had noticed that the shop had been closed for a little while. He knew Roy was a diabetic and was worried that he might be ill.
The 6 o'clock news from the BBC with Sue Lawley and Andrew Harvey.
Today, he did not think the children who went down the cliff were in any immediate danger. It's the fourth day of the inquest into the deaths of 4 of his pupils. The battle against the drug traffickers. The government is sending undercover agents. Big pay increases have been recommended for top civil servants, judges and senior members of the armed forces. Mrs. Thatcher has...
2 hours later, at 7:45, the police had been called.
I'll try and find where the mirror is. Check that room. Neil, in there!
Sometime between 5:20 and 6:10, Roy Page had been murdered.
So you better get an ambulance. Right, okay. I'll go outside.
Every gas appliance in the house had been turned full on. Well, Detective Superintendent Lou Clark, you're quite precise about the time that Roy was killed.
Well, Mrs. Allen says she left the shop about 5:20. We know that people went between 5:20 and about 6:10 and couldn't get in. The door was bolted, and a man was seen coming from the side of the shop, the one on the side.
We have a
on Elmora
reconstruction
Road.
of what was seen, yes.
Yes, about 6:10 to 6:15. The man was identical to the man seen earlier, posing as the gas board man. This time he was carrying something under his arm. We suspect that was the overall, which would now have been blood-stained.
We have a video fit of that man, if we can take a closer look at him once again. He's
Yes.
very heavily built, isn't he?
He is, some witnesses say, about 15 stone or more. He's a big man, 5'11" or more, 35 to 45 years, dark hair, and perhaps had a Welsh accent, wearing spectacles.
Why was Mr. Page murdered? Was the motive theft?
I would have thought it was theft, and I think it was a bungled crime. I think we were looking for a petty thief who goes in to distract shopkeepers and people in their homes so that he can steal. And I think Mr. Page caught him stealing, trapped him, and he had to kill Mr. Page to get out of the shop.
Well, as I said earlier, there was one vital clue left behind. It's this earpiece, which you're quite convinced, are you, that it was the killer who left this earpiece beside
It
Mr.
certainly
Page?
didn't belong to Mr. Page, and we know that that earpiece looked like this in its original state, from a typical transistor radio, some years old, but we know it didn't belong to the deceased, and a witness saw the gas man wearing an identical piece shortly after 4:30 that day.
And he was seen carrying a small black box too. Would this have been connected to a transistor radio?
Well, that's what we think. He's most probably using it to make people believe he's got some sort of instrument for detecting gas leaks.
What exactly did he steal?
He stole a cream-coloured plastic purse which had £700 in it, a white envelope with a name Paul written on the side in handwriting, that had £200, at least £149 from the till, and surprising, a hairbrush from the bedroom upstairs. This is the matching mirror that he didn't take, and as you see, there doesn't seem to be any reason to steal that at all, but it's missing from the premises. It's gone. And one thing I would like to say is that the deceased in this case was an ordinary working man. He worked 7 days a week, 7:30 in the morning to 8:30 in the evening, and his 2 sons and daughter are just the same, hard-working, ordinary people who are putting their life savings into offering a £5,000 reward leading to the arrest and conviction of their father's killer.
I hope you get some calls. Thank you very much indeed, Lou Clark.
Indeed, if you think you can help, please don't hesitate to call us 01811 8055, or you can call Bristol Police on 267 986. There's the number, 0272 for Bristol, 267 986. Curiously, Crimewatch isn't so much about crime as about its victims. It's these victims that have aroused your sympathy and your concern, and our next reconstruction is all about one victim who lived alone in St Paul's in Bristol. Mrs. Violet Milsom was 62. She was a grandmother, and 6 weeks ago, someone murdered her. When police arrived at her flat, they, and the medical crews as well, were shocked and distressed by the injuries that had been inflicted on her. They began a search for clues. They now want to enlist your help. Our reconstruction begins nearly a month before her death in Bristol. It shows none of the violence, only the events that led up to it.
Phil, I would like to talk more about that, but we'll pause some music first. The Radio Orchestra, appropriately, The Song of Summer.
Violet Milsom lived alone in a dingy basement flat. Her grandchildren were welcome visitors, but they couldn't get to see her often, and she was a lonely soul, with Ginger her only company. She was rather scared as well. Each night she lodged a little message in her window to ward off strangers. At 6 p.m, as St. Paul's began to come alive, Violet's day was almost over. Tuesday, September the 3rd, at about 10 o'clock. She disturbed 3 young men who'd smashed a pane of glass in her door. Thursday, the 26th of September, 3 weeks on, and 5 days before she died, Violet went shopping for a chest of drawers.
Can I help you?
How much is that one?
I think, yeah, it's a tenner, that one.
The owner remembers Violet because she couldn't spare a tenner from her weekly pension, and she agreed to give him a deposit.
If you can't leave a favour deposit, then we'll give you a receipt and then we'll come and pick it up when you want. Right, I'll get your receipt.
Thanks.
Next day, Friday the 27th, the owner saw Violet once again. She seemed to know this man. If it was you, or if you know who he is, please call us. Monday, September the 30th. It's pension day, and having collected her allowance, Violet went to do the weekly shopping. It wasn't hard to spend about £5 of the 36 on Rice Krispies, tin soup and cat food. That afternoon, a helpful neighbour was doing some gardening for Violet.
Oh, have a nice cup of coffee, John. It does look nice, John. When do you think you'll be able to come and finish it, then?
I don't think it'll be tonight.
Oh, why don't you come tonight? I never open my door after 6 o'clock, you know.
Well, it'll probably be sometime tomorrow.
After her neighbour left, Violet went to fetch the evening paper. As far as we know, it's the last time she left her home alive. What happened next was seen in detail by a witness sitting right across the street. Old Sam, an ageing tramp, was in his usual doorway outside the Shady Grove Cafe. And another witness, David Crowley, remembers walking past the flat that night because at about 8 o'clock, 3 youths came out of a garden and pushed past him. And another witness, on her way home at midnight, remembers a man appearing from a gateway near Violet's flat. Old Sam saw all of this as well. He must have done. Yet, ironically, though he can see, he doesn't understand. He lives in a world of his own. Next morning, Violet's neighbour came back to do the gardening as he'd promised. When he'd finished, he went down to the flat to borrow a broom. He discovered Violet's body. She'd been strangled, sexually assaulted, and horribly mutilated. Detective Superintendent Malcolm Hughes is the man seeking the killers, and you've been in charge of murder investigations before, but this, I think, is the worst, or certainly one of the worst you've ever come across.
Yes, I've dealt with a number of murders, and without a doubt, this is one of the worst, yes.
You've brought a clue. What's this?
This is a belt, I believe, from a summer dress. When we found Mrs. Milsom's body, this was tied around her wrist, and without doubt, has been used by the killer to tie her up.
Not necessarily hers, you think, then? It's nylon.
Yes, it's a nylon material. It looks as though it's from a summer dress. Despite all our inquiries, we cannot be sure this belonged to Mrs. Milsom and could well have been taken there by her killer.
Right. Now, there were several witnesses, as we saw, and people that you badly need to trace. Let's start, if we can, with the three youths who were seen, they sort of bumped into. Well, actually, there was the man, of course, first at the trading post, wasn't there, with the long hair. What do we know about him?
Yes. We know that he was with Mrs. Milsom. They appeared to be quite friendly and obviously knew each other. Now, despite all our inquiries, we haven't found him yet, and I would like to speak to him, obviously.
Right. Then there was the witness, David Crowley, walking past. Three youths bumped into him coming out of a garden.
Yes, that was about 8 o'clock on Monday the 30th. I'm not saying they're the murderers, but they were certainly in the area at a very important time, and I would like to talk to them.
And, of course, the man coming out of the gate, I think, very close to her house at about midnight.
Yes, he's an interesting man. He was coming out of a gate next door to hers. Despite all our inquiries, nobody knows him in that house. Nobody knows him in Mrs. Milsom's house. And it's very important I find him and talk to him.
We'll come back to just how important in a moment, but you've got a card there. Can we just have a look at that and why?
Yes, indeed. When we looked at Mrs. Milsom's belongings at her flat, and amongst some documentation, we found this card. It's a Christmas card. On the front it says, "For my sweetheart at Christmas." Inside, it says, "To Violet from Steve." Now, despite speaking to all her relatives and friends, we have not been able to find Steve, and I would again like to speak to him.
You want to speak, in fact, to anybody who knew Violet Milsom?
Yes, I do.
Now, you're really worried about this murder for a particular reason. Can you explain what it is?
Mrs. Milsom was brutally and sadistically killed. I believe that the man who killed her is mentally disturbed and dangerous. I also believe if he's not caught, he may kill again. I also believe that somebody knows who he is, or may suspect they know who he is. And if there's anybody who knows who killed Mrs. Milsom, or who suspects somebody of killing her, then please come forward and speak to me, because they may prevent another terrible crime.
You really think it's a likelihood that this man will kill again?
I think it's a possibility that he will kill again, yes.
Well, if you think you can help, please do ring us here in the studio. Here's the number, 01 811 8055. Remember, you can speak in absolute confidence. Or you can ring Bristol Police at Trinity Road Police Station, Bristol 267 985. That's 0272 267 985.